Hi everyone, we are still here and welcome to the Josh show again. Today I'm really very excited. You can see what is our topic. Our topic is emotional intelligence with Jason Grain. He came back to our show again, and it's a very good time to transform ourselves because we are in the lockdown. In the Ramadan month is also, we are most of the time we are spending at the home, so we are learning a lot of different things. So for example, we have started this jaw show. So it's the same thing, we have some weaknesses which we are trying to be overcome. And the one of thing is very important from my perspective is emotional intelligence. How you need to be express yourself, how you need to be, what is the importance of emotion intelligence in your life, how you can be overcome if you have some shortcoming. So lot of discussions in my mind, I have written down some questions. I'm sure you have also some questions which we will ask from the Jason. So let's welcome him. And Jawad is also now came in the studio. Assalamu alaikum, Jawad.
Walaikum assalam. How are you?
I'm good.
Assalamu
I'm good.
I
alaikum,
hope
brothers.
everybody's fine, good. Welcome, Jason.
Thank you very much.
So Jason, when may
You are looking very fresh.
Yes, I literally just had a shave specifically for this program. So thank you for
Good.
noticing
Thank
that.
you very much.
Thank you.
Now you are the handsome guy, and we two are not. So people would not like to see us.
Hey guys, I don't think I'll ever be as handsome as you are, but that's I'm striving towards that.
So this is the difference between motivational speaker and anchor. Okay. So, okay. Jason, when we are talking about the emotional intelligence, okay, I was reading something. So the first question is why it is important. If we are talking about when we are talking in normal life and chit chat version with the friends, we are saying we are men. Why we need to be crying, why we need to having expressing our emotions to the other people. Okay, so I want to understand this first point, why we need this emotional intelligence.
Okay, so first of all, emotions are something that people ought to be familiar with as a daily occurrence in most people's lives. Okay, if I snap at my child and say, shut up, don't do that, move away, I'm expressing emotions. Or if I'm being polite to someone and being kind, I'm also expressing emotions. And so all of us have been subject to receiving on the other end of the emotional expressions of other people, right? Receiving them, either praise, like you brothers have just said, oh, you're looking really beautiful after having a shave or whatever, you're really looking handsome. It's like, thank you. I'm smiling instantly because everyone likes to hear positive, nice words. And conversely, if you told me, oh, you're really ugly and you're rubbish and so on, I would probably be like, well, that's not so, that's not making me feel so great. And so emotional intelligence is really knowing how to utilize emotions in the most functional way for us individually to lead our lives in a happy, blissful, content, peaceful way. And for those emotions to spread around to other people so that we can influence and impact on others in a way that we want them to behave back towards us, as opposed to, shouting at us, being angry, and so on. So emotional intelligence is really about managing how you are feeling at all times.
Okay, so but Jason, if you think about when we are praising someone, when we are agree with someone what he wanted, so there are the two things come in my mind. If you are caring too much, this is also a problem, I think.
Mm-hmm.
If you are not taking care, so it will be also a problem. You can lose them. You can lose them. They will not be agree with you. So how we can be some balance between the caring too much or not too much?
Okay.
Less consider.
This is excellent question. So what you're talking about there is technically known as empathy or compassion. Okay. So empathy is when I am putting myself mentally and psychologically into your own shoes and trying to feel as much like the way you feel. So if you're feeling really sad, depressed, painful, emotionally suffering, then if I'm empathizing with you, I should also feel sad, painful, depressed, emotionally suffering, and so on. And that becomes burden not just on you but also on me, because two of us are now feeling depressed, let's say, in that example. Whereas with compassion, what I'm doing is I'm recognizing and caring that you are feeling depressed or whatever, and I'm saying, well, I see that, I respect and appreciate that, and I can I'm giving you your space, but it's not me. It's not for me to feel those feelings. And so that's compassion, recognizing another person's emotions but not having to feel them. And so the latter, the compassion, is a much more functional way for people to behave than empathy, which is also very useful, but can drain us. If we're constantly empathizing with everyone, we just feel drained. We feel like, oh God, like, life is just so terrible. Because most of the time, people that surround us are just constantly complaining about something. It's like, why is my microphone, why can't I point my microphone a little bit this way? Or is my face looking slightly wonky in here? Or, have I shaven this little bit here? I can find a million reasons to potentially complain and reasons to kind of drop my emotions down. But then again, I can also consciously just thank Allah, right, for breath of life, and just go, I'm alive. Yeah, let's go. And then really feel that, and then act from that space and from those emotions. So this is something to develop as a superpower, almost, to go, am I here to empathize with someone or be compassionate and give them their time and space to process their emotions and let that be with them? Or should I be interfering somehow? And most of the time, we shouldn't.
Very well. Jason, before I ask you a question, I must appreciate your last breathing technique on stress management. And I must thank you, because I have been trying since then and it is working excellent, especially the one to relax and sleep.
Mm-hmm.
So now you just mentioned that that it is good to have compassion at some time. Now, there are always situations where we need to have empathy. So can you exemplify where we need to have a compassion and where we need to have an empathy? Number one. The other question that I would like to ask is, what is emotional intelligence? Yes, we learned about the emotions. It's a daily occurrence. But what is emotional intelligence? What is EQ in today's business world? So I would ask three more questions, but first come first, and that is, would you mind exemplifying the situations where empathy is important and where the compassion is important?
All right. So empathy is something that we frequently practice in design. If I'm speaking to somebody, I'm designing tools or services, especially services for healthcare and things like that. It's important to empathize with patients and people that you're serving to understand really how they're feeling, so that you can design tools and systems and services for them that fit into their particular emotional situation that they're finding themselves in. So that's empathy has got very, very practical uses for driving those kind of design decisions, and for us to actually better understand what other people are going through, so that if we are looking to help them in very specific ways, that we can actually design and come up with solutions that serve them best. So practice, I'd say, practice empathy with intention, okay, to solve a problem. But compassion is something that we should be always like that. Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, would have been somebody who is always compassionate, right? Always caring. It's really caring, right? Caring for everybody. He would have been somebody, if we're breaking fast, he would have gone the last, to have a date, make sure that everyone else is fed. He would have eaten last. That's compassion, because he knows that deep down in himself, he's strong. He's got that. He's connected to Allah as close as possible, right? And Allah's going to look after him. And, dates, they can wait another minute or whatever, everyone else, make sure that they're fed, and then I'll eat, and so on. So those kind of things, that's compassion. More you practice that, more you're going to see your life actually become better and better, because the rest of the people are mostly just really thinking about themselves. They're selfish, and they're really not caring about other people's emotions. They're just looking to get whatever they can, however it takes. Okay. And that's just that. I mean, a simple example of compassion practice is, for example, right, these days we're walking on our daily quarantine walks and so on, and you go past people in the forest, and there's somebody, you're like walking past, and now somebody has to step aside for the other person to walk past because of social distancing and all those kind of things. Now, I could just walk past and not care, or I can walk past and thank that person for giving me space and so on. You see, some people practice this and some other people just don't care. The people who practice this are compassionate. The other people are not so compassionate. Okay. And, that kind of reflects on the human psychology, subconsciously all the time. You really appreciate the people who say thank you, have a nice day. And you kind of think like the other people who just kind of walk past you, like, what are they thinking? Do they really, are they just kind of stuck in their own heads? Okay. So what is emotional intelligence versus IQ, EQ versus IQ? So IQ is to do with rational thinking, logicalizing, understanding that A leads to B, leads to C, these kind of things, processes, and so on. Whereas EQ is understanding, emotional quotient or intelligence is understanding that irrespective of what's most sense making, logical for me to do, I'm still going to feel certain way and end up doing something else. So, for example, there's a lot of Muslims around the world right now who know logically that they should be fasting, but they don't feel like it. So as a result, what they're going to do is they're going to do what they feel like most of the time. Okay. Some people will be able to override their emotions and feel like not doing it, but they'll still kind of push through with their logical mind. But that requires willpower. Okay. Like, let's go, champ. Come on. We can do this. Most people don't have that willpower, and that willpower is quite draining on their overall psychology and body energy. So they just kind of let their emotions guide them, and they end up doing the easiest thing that there is to do. Okay. So people who have good emotional intelligence understand these kind of tendencies of human mind and psychology and the ego, really. So they kind of have more compassion for themselves in a way that they say, well, okay, I know you're thinking that you're feeling like not fasting, but that's just your thinking. We'll put that to the side and let's just do what's good for us. And have that kind of inner conversation, and you just do the right thing, and you end up fasting. And you actually, when you do the right thing and it's right, you actually start feeling better. So as opposed to empathizing with oneself and go, oh, I'm not feeling like fasting, and I just like, and you tend to kind of create this negative downward spiral, self supporting statements internally, and you just end up acting on that emotion. In fact, psychology shows us, and studies in psychology show that people's decisions in what they do are 95% driven by their emotions and only 5% driven by their rational thinking. That's how bad it is in terms of emotional. So why it's important to be emotionally intelligent is because you don't want to be, first of all, working against yourself and just willy-nilly acting on every emotion that comes up. But also you don't want to be ruining other people's lives around you, especially your family and immediate people that you're locked down in, because a lot of people around the world, there's going to be lots of domestic violence that happens because people can't control their emotions. They spark up, they flare up, people get angry and they start fighting each other, and that's not good for anyone.
Jason, excellent. Now, since I know, but how the emotional intelligence in today's world is important in businesses, how much it is important. First of all, why it is important and how much it is important.
Yeah. So I said that people make 95% of their decisions from emotional place. Okay. So what happens is that when people are buying products, they do something that's known as post-rationalizing their decisions. In other words, you would think that when people are buying a product, like for example, this is an Apple Pencil here. Okay. So you would think that they buy a product saying, oh, I need a pencil to write with. And then they go, oh, Apple Pencil, I'll buy this. No, it doesn't work like that. They see an Apple Pencil, they see an advert and it's beautifully presented and say, like, you can have so many different pens in there and you can do these beautiful drawings and all these kind of things. And you watch this and you go like, oh my God, I feel like having one of those. It's so cool. It'll make me look so cool with other people and so on. So you feel into that and you get drawn into that. And then you start post-rationalizing to say, well, I need this because all my other pencils have been lost and broken and I don't know where they are and they lose the ink and so on. And you start bringing up all these kind of rational reasons for why you need this thing. And then with the rational reasoning, which have happened post emotions, that's why it's called post rationalization. With those rational reasons, you then go off and spend, in this case, it's like £100 for this thing. Okay. So for businesses to sell more things, what they first do is they appeal to your emotions, make sure that you feel good about the product, and then they let you post rationalize why you need it.
Okay, so Jason, Saeed Abbasi is asking, emotional intelligence is God gifted or someone can learn it? If learn it from, I'm adding one of the part of the question, how we can learn and what are the steps or habits we need to develop our emotional intelligence better?
Okay, so everything's God gifted. Okay, the fact that we're alive is gift from God, but then, what does it mean to be alive? And what it means to be alive is that we are able to speak, we're able to think, we're able to breathe and do everything that our bodies are doing. We're able to grow and change, and we're able to feel. Yeah. So, robots, the last time I checked, robots can't feel. So that's big difference between a robot and a human. Lots of robots can work things out. If I ask Siri on the iPad, to do some calculations for me, it will work it out. So it's doing some sort of thinking, but it doesn't particularly feel anything yet. And so feelings and emotions are very, very specifically human trait, and humans can feel a whole range of emotions, from complete misery and apathy and anger and sadness and shame and guilt, all the way up to bliss, enlightenment, joy, wisdom, and reverence, and so on. So it is a God's gift, okay? But at the same time, Allah said to us, look after yourself and I'll look after you too, right? So we have to look after ourselves and keep working on ourselves to improve and get better if we want to feel more of the bliss, enlightenment, wisdom, love, joy, and so on. So it's really about learning how to let go of those apathetic and negative and bad emotions and feel a lot more into the other side of the spectrum. Now, that's not to say that any emotion is per se bad, but the last time I checked, I would rather feel loving, caring, happy, compassionate, playful, and so on, than anger, depression, sadness, all these kind of things. And I've been in anger, depression, and sadness, and I've been in bliss and care and love. I can report back to everyone that I much prefer bliss, care, and love. Okay.
Yeah. So let me ask one question, Jason here. When you someone has pleased, most of the time when you are talking with someone and whatever he wanted, if I will say yes, he will be pleased. If I will say no, maybe he will be angry. He or she will be angry most of the time. It is depend upon the office, in the businesses, in the home, everywhere. It's depend upon. So my question is how to say no and people will not be angry and my emotional intelligence will not be disturbed.
Okay, so before I answer that question, I want to explain something in terms of how the mechanics of this works. So first of all, the way emotions arise is that what happens is that there is some sort of an event that happens. Let's say an employee or colleague asks you, can you do this for me? Okay, that event triggers a certain thinking. Now as soon as that question is asked, can you do this? Now you're thinking, okay, can I do this? Have I got time? Do I know how to do it? What else have I got to do? Am I busy? Will I have space and tooling for it? All sorts of things. You're doing lots of thinking. And so thinking comes first. Then that thinking goes into a little bit of a loop because the mind thinks quite fast. So you start combining all these things like, oh God, I wanted to go home, now. And he's asking me, I wanted to go home in 5 minutes, but he's asking me to work for another half an hour, do something. And I wasn't planning to do that. And that if I do that, then it's going to have a knock-on impact on me picking up my child from school. I'm going to be late. My wife's going to have a go at me. I might not get dinner tonight. I'll be hungry. There's all these kind of things that run up like a stream of thoughts. And then the only thing that you say to your colleague is no. Okay. But you'll say that with a feeling. It's a no, because what's in the emotion is all those other thoughts that you're not saying. Okay. So the way to manage, so you've got an event, you've got a trigger. The thoughts are the trigger that then trigger emotions, and then emotions rise up and you act or react to the event, okay, with the emotion. And so what then needs to happen is that we need to become aware that our thoughts generate emotions, and that if we pattern interrupt, as it's called, if we interrupt that process, we can actually just go back to just the thoughts, and potentially the communication could be yes. So the answer is yes, if this, that, and that, and that. Okay. So then it's on the other person to decide whether they still want you to do that or not. Okay. So I basically never say no. I just say yes to people, but give them conditions which they need to fulfill in order for me to do that thing, so that it's on them to actually understand what's going on. So I might say, yes, I'll do that tomorrow, if that's okay, because I've got, my wife, I need to pick up my children. My wife is cooking dinner, blah, 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 all that kind of stuff. Okay. So that they know what I'm thinking. Okay. And I just say that without any emotion joined to that. So that's one way to answer that. Okay. And then they will probably say, oh, it's okay. Then they'll feel bad that they asked. Okay. But that's all, that's their feeling. So we can be compassionate with their feeling. That's fine.
So, Jason, you just identified, or rather, it is established that it is more of our emotions with which we speak or utter than the words are, than the utterance itself. It's not the oration, it's the emotion that create the problem.
Correct.
Correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So now let's take this discussion into another way. Let's consider a very normal business environment where there is a boss and there is an employee, or and most of the time what happens is that employee rather does not understands why the boss is angry, uh, and then the things gets more worse and all that stuff. What skills do you think needs to be, or what techniques are available for this employee to understand the emotion of the boss or colleague or peer, or even in the home, the family, sometimes wife, sometimes parents? What techniques are available for emotional understanding?
Okay, so the reason why I'm wearing a black shirt today is actually a bit symbolical, because what the black shirt represents is the shadow side of every human. Okay, so we all have these shadow elements in our psychology, which are sort of hidden, unconscious things that we're constantly carrying around with ourselves, and that are actually causing us to feel, usually causing us to feel bad. Okay. uh, and that's why, in Islam, the prayer is always Bismillah imin shaitan rajim, and so on, because it's like, protect me from shaitan. That shaitan is the darkness that is within us. Okay. And so this is why Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, had the angel Jibril, take the black stuff out of his chest, which is, that's kind of like a symbolic narrative around the darkness was taken out of Prophet's sort of psychology, right? So he wasn't able to be traumatized in the way that he responded to other people, and that's why he was so much more influential to other people. But the reason why I put the black shirt on is because most of the time everyone's carrying around that darkness with themselves, and what happens is that they eventually, the more people get closer and closer together as you're working with other people, they become a lot more like family. And you see that a lot of the time your wife or your sister or your brother feels a lot more open to tell you bad things. Shut up, don't do this. They'll shout at you. Why? Because they feel a sense of like they have a sense
Ownership.
of ownership, and like they feel like they're allowed to do that. Okay.
Yes.
And as the longer you work in a company, the more it feels more like a family relationship, in which the boss, who feels like a sense of authority, like a father, they bring their own black shirt along, and they're expelling that on you. And it's all usually mostly negative emotions: anger, sadness, depression, anxiety, fear, all these kind of things. And they because people do this psycho projection, they project whatever the emotions are within them, and those bad thoughts, they project it onto other people, because they don't know how to deal with it themselves. They don't have the angel come down and take it out of them. Okay. And so this is really what I do with my Fresh Mind program. It's a program to clear all those traumas that are constantly causing us to go, shut up, you don't know, just do it, and so on. So you don't need to feel angry and sad and depressed, because you are taken out that shadow out of yourself.
Okay. So can we take the question? One more question from Saeed. I think emotional intelligence of pets are stronger than human. What are your comments?
Well, okay. So this is an important thing to say. Actually, we don't really know. So,
Sorry, Jason. I can add one more thing.
yeah.
Who has a strong emotional intelligence, a man or woman?
Okay. So,
Part of the
so
question.
I'm actually probably going to write a book about that separately, but it's a good question. So firstly, I have to say something. I don't know. I look at your eyes and I look at your avatars, especially through these kind of modern day technologies. I don't know what any one of you guys are feeling, right? You might be or thinking, right? You might be thinking, oh, Jason is like the stupidest guy on the planet. He's clueless. I hate him. Whatever. I don't know. right? You could also be feeling loving feelings, or you might not feel anything. I don't know. Okay, I'm not a mind reader. I'm not kind of like clairvoyant, And whoever says to you that they do know, they might be reading like, I see Jawad is smiling at the moment, so maybe at this point, that's giving me some insight into that he's feeling a little bit happier. But maybe that's just a temporal happiness in the grander pool of him thinking that I'm stupid and I'm a bad guy. Okay, I don't know. Okay, so his grand emotion could be that he hates me, but his temporal thing could be that he's happy about something that I said. I don't know. Okay, so that's where it's important to be careful. Okay, full of care, to actually pay attention and try and notice and listen to people and so on. When people are speaking, they usually speak with words that represent emotions. So if someone says, I hate you, usually that doesn't mean they love you. Okay. So you got to take those words as somewhat reflective of what they're thinking and feeling. Okay. And so that's that. And so then the question was around whether pets have stronger or better emotions than humans. Again, we don't know. Like, I look at my cat, I don't know what it's feeling. Is it happy? Is it sad? Is it faking it? When it comes in, it's like meow. Like, is that happiness, sadness? Is it angry? Is it depressed? Basically, is it hungry? Okay. But what you can learn from pets and animals is their base emotions or their base way of living. So, for example, I love going scuba diving and snorkeling in the sea in like Egypt and so on. So when you go around, most of the time people fear, oh, there's going to be some sort of barracuda that comes and bites me and attacks me and so on. But actually, you realize that you can dive around the coral reef. There's all sorts of super dangerous, toxic animals. Okay. As long as you don't go too close to them, they won't do anything to you. All they're ever doing is minding their own business. But if you come too close, they'll attack. They'll defend themselves. Okay. So for most part, animals are calm. They're peaceful. They are minding their own business. The little Nemo fish just goes around the coral and it's like, grazing around. That's what it does. It doesn't try and be an astronaut. Okay. Whereas what most humans do is they're born, let's say, when I was a refugee from Bosnia, I could have been really depressed about the fact that I wasn't Elon Musk running my own company building cars if I was thinking like that. But actually, the logical thing to do is be present in the now, survive, okay? Don't do anything stupid to injure yourself or catch some sort of heavy disease. Stay calm, stay collected, and inshallah, better times will come. Yeah? Actually, if you practice that all the time, you know what you're going to have? Better times, guaranteed, because you won't be wasting yourself on negative emotions. Okay. And so that's the practice of wise men. And that's how Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, would have been acting at all times. Peaceful, peaceful, peaceful. That's why Islam is the peaceful religion. And so, and that's the wise way to act. So every time you drop into anger and snappiness and so on, you're actually being in that shaitan mode. Okay, you're going into the black shirt. Okay, and that's not a place to go to. But it's important to be aware that most of us are carrying this unless we've gone through some sort of a process that has been about clearing that and letting that go and being conscious that those are not the emotions that I want to choose to be in and think about. Okay.
So Jason, okay, I'll take this question and then I'll have my own. The Faiza Amir is our viewer and she's asking, how do you de-stress yourself after a bad day at work?
Okay, so this used to be my common thing that I would want to do, and I would like build up stress and stress and stress throughout the day. And then I might want to be like either praying or meditating or just switching off. That's why people say, oh, I need to switch off now. I come back from work and I need to switch off and I just need to not do anything, or I play games, or I just watch some rubbish TV or something like that. That's how most people think and work. That's not how I work. So I'm very cognizant and aware and conscious of stress as an emotion that I do not want to be feeling at all. So I work in predeterministic way to ensure that stress does not arise in my body at all. Now that requires always being remembering. Basically, you got to always remember God. Okay, this is kind of like, so in that sense, I've been contemplating a lot about the story where Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, was originally told by the angels that he needs to pray 1,000,000 times a day, right? And then he said, well, that's too much. I've got wife, children, work, this and that. So they negotiated it down to 7 times a day and then 5 times a day, right? But the way I think of that story is that we can be praying 1,000,000 times a day, because every time I say something, I'm praying. Okay, now I'm praying. Okay, and I need to be speaking words that are relaxing, that are not stressful, that are peaceful. And every word like that is a prayer. Okay, so if you think that way, then you realize, well, I never need to be stressing about anything. And you know what happens? Because you don't emotionally burn yourself out, you can actually be working nonstop. And every single thing you do is a prayer and a meditation. And every single thing is building you up. It's making you stronger, because other people will be like, how can he be like this all the time? And the answer is, when you remove the black shirt, you don't need to be stressing, and you're always peaceful, and other people start actually treating you with more peace and respect and reverence and joy and wisdom. Why? Because they don't want to look bad in your eye. And this is why, if you can imagine yourself, if we were today with Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, would we be telling him, oh, you're stupid, you're like this? No, you would be peaceful. Why? Because this guy is peaceful himself. You would be affected and influenced by that peace. And that's really what the way of the Prophet is,
So before asking, before taking the question from our beloved Masroor Hussain Shah Sahab, so it's mean what I understand from your conversation now. So we have some label on our forehead. So what I am type of the person is, I'm the cool person or hyper person, and the people are treating me according to my label. So
it's almost literally like that. Literally, your face tells, and there's this kind of Chinese technique of reading faces. So you can actually look at people's faces. If people do a lot of this, you see what happens. The lines actually wrinkle up like this. But if people do this a lot, you get a lot of these sidelines here, this and so on. So if person is smiling all the time, their face becomes like that. But if they're angry all the time, their face becomes like that. So you can actually look at somebody, especially when they're older, because this kind of imprints itself. You can actually look and say, well, this person has spent decades in anger, and this other person has spent decades in happiness.
Yeah.
And so it's literally printed on our faces.
So we can take the question,
Okay,
how
Jason.
guide your team to use their emotion intelligently for positive result and better outcome, and then we will go to the Jawad.
Yeah, so pretty much everything I've been speaking about today is all about that. So understand that, first of all, your thoughts are generated by triggers that are happening because of some sort of event or a thing. It might if you don't understand triggers, if your phone has run out of battery, chances are I'll be like, oh God, it's ran out of battery, I need to charge it now. Suddenly you could go into this downward spiral of emotions. Or you could just go, oh, it's run out of battery, I'll charge it. It's fine. That's it. That's all I need to think about. And I don't need to get up into like some emotional spiral. So similarly, if your wife, and I think a lot of people on this call will have wives and husbands, if they have a go at you and it's like, why didn't you do this? You could just stand there, peacefully smile, and just say, I love you. And see what happens. Because first thing they'll do is they'll go something like, what do you mean? Because what's going to happen is their pattern will be interrupted. And they'll start thinking, hold on a second, why am I being so emotional over something maybe that's as trivial as you've put your socks on the floor, right? And instead of putting it away in some like dirty washing basket, okay? So that way you can influence things, and certainly this way you can also guide your employees and everyone around you to shift up their emotions from that anger, sadness, anxiety, fear, panic, shame, guilt, misery into willingness, courage, empowerment, love, joy, wisdom, care, and so on.
So, Jason, thank you, Amir, for allowing me to ask few questions. Since you said that 95% of the decisions are are made on the emotional inputs rather than rational inputs, then then I think it is very vital that we start teaching our kids and ourselves, and we start learning the techniques to sharp our emotional intelligence portion of our thinking process. I mean, the tool that we have as an emotional intelligence, that needs to be sharpened, because we are taking decisions 95% based on it. For
Correct.
that, what process or learning procedure do you suggest people might have or adopt to go through it? For example, if I want to be a doctor, I would go for a pre-med, I would go to the med school, and then I would be a doctor. Then I would have a knowledge required to operate, consult people's health. Do you think is there any such defined pattern to sharp our emotional intelligence skills?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the common things is meditation, right? So, and this is what, again, Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, also practiced a lot. Uh, and prayer is one form of meditation. And it's just reminding us of the basic principles of life, going always back to breath. Because, again, as you guys have seen in that previous session that we did, when you're breathing, uh, even if you're breathing just regularly, with proper full breath, you usually feel a lot calmer. But if you're breathing into that bottom part of your stomach, you feel totally calm. You don't actually feel any particular emotions like, particular bliss or anger, or so you feel more like balanced emotions. And more you are able to stay in that balance, the more you're able to actually think rationally and not have the emotions cloud your decision making. Okay, so that's really that. But that requires usually a lot of practice for people who have been conditioned to just snap at every single thing, or just go straight into emotion, or not even really think, or not even be aware that that's how it works. They just go straight into like, oh, that I hate that, and then they decide everything from that state. So it's really rolling back all the way to the first principle of breath, right? And remembering God. And by the way, God is not angry and destructive and so on. He is also compassionate, all merciful, all loving, all these kind of things, right? And so more you remember God and breath, the more you just kind of balance yourself, drop or rise into that frequency of love, compassion, mercy, and so on, right? And so that's really the thing that needs to be practiced all the time. And I would say, actually, the angels were right at the beginning, million times a day, right? Because you can never have enough of it. It's just should be the basic default setting for humans.
So I'll ask Saeed Abbasi's question and then I'll ask mine. How we can identify that the emotion of someone are real or fake? I mean,
Okay, so
it has many dimensions. I mean, the question has
yeah,
many.
well, so I mean, I next to me is my 8-year-old daughter Layla, right? And so sometimes you see when people, so actors are great at faking emotions, but they're great at faking emotions because the way they've clocked onto this process that they can think of bad things, right? If they want to feel angry, they'll imagine like some really bad thing has happened to their daughter or something, and then they'll feel into the anger. They'll think those thoughts and feel as like and then they'll act that out. But most of the time, most people are bad actors. So my 8-year-old daughter, she'll say like, "Oh, Daddy, I'm really tired. I need to eat something." And really, what she's doing is she's buying some time. She's looking at me now. She's buying some time to play some games, right, or spend a little bit more time on the iPad. And so what I would do is I would do a pattern interrupt, and I start smiling at her, go like, "Oh, really? You're feeling tired? You're feeling, hungry or whatever?" And she'd be like, and then she starts laughing, right? Because I know that she's just faking the emotion. She's sort of bad acting. But if they're really sort of crying from like, really from the bottom of their lungs, then it's a real emotion, and that's something that needs to be attended to, because maybe they've, God forbid, hurt themselves and so on. So this is an important thing to also you know um, develop as well as a skill, and pay attention, be very careful, because a lot of people will try and fake an emotion to get something out of you, because most of the time other people are like, I don't want to feel sad, I don't want them to feel sad and bad and all that stuff, because they'll project it more onto me, and I don't need that. So if they just say, oh, I need a biscuit, it's like, here's a biscuit. It's much easier for me to give you a biscuit than to be dealing with all your like and all that stuff, because I haven't got time. No one's got time for that stuff. No one's really looking for it unless it's on Netflix or some sort of drama show in which we're really looking for like the hero to be suffering through all sorts of things. Why? Because we're just entertained, because we're like, we don't have to suffer through that. They're suffering and we're just entertained with a popcorn, you know?
Well, you just referred to another behavior of of humanity, that is enjoying someone's suffering or
Yeah.
taking an entertainment from someone's sufferings, and this is very common behavior among people. Uh, Jason,
Well,
another.
that's actually, it's important to say that that's the shaitan within us.
Yes,
Shaitan enjoys other people's suffering.
suffering.
Yeah.
So, Jason, you see, you referred earlier that the steps for any anger or any emotion is that some event occurs, and then you think something, and then you react. These were the three steps that takes you to any emotion. Now, when I think about it, what I get is that if from that action or that event I get a negative thoughts, my reaction will always be a negative. For example, road rage.
Yes.
That could be one good example about it. Or getting angry with Amer just because I didn't like his striped shirt today.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
I was all thinking negative about the
Yeah.
Amel's wearing and
Yeah.
his outfits. I didn't like it because he looks
Mhm.
too smart on
Yeah.
wearing these outfits. So
Yeah.
I was thinking that. So it is all in our head then. Whatever
Totally.
react we do, it's in the thoughts. Then my question leads to what are what we need to do to control our thoughts in a positive way. I know this is a typical question, but it all concludes on to that very important point.
Okay, so actually, when you say you might be angry or feeling bad that Amir is wearing striped shirt, the reason why you might feel that way could be, for example, and it goes back to the shadow. It could be that at some point your dad beat you up while wearing a stripy shirt, and you associated negative and painful emotions with the stripy shirt. So even
Yes.
in your subconscious, it could be that you are just hating now on him. You're putting that hate back and anger towards him because you think you hate the shirt, but you're basically, what you could be seeing is your dad beating you up without realizing it. Okay. And then you just kind of replaying that emotion. And so what a lot of the contemplative meditation is about, which is about deeply thinking about yourself and introspection and so on, and deeply thinking about what is real and what's not real, and what, how things stack up as a sort of logical creation of the universe. A lot of it is about actually going back to various events that are still triggering you. So, for example, for me, it was because I spent 3 years of war in Bosnia. It created a lot of post-traumatic stress disorder in me, trauma, basically. And so I was constantly suffering that whole period, refugee, blah, blah, blah. And then at one point, I started realizing, hold on a second, I'm always feeling bad about something that happened 25 years ago. That's not good for me, because the enemies have won. Even though I saved myself, they have won because they're making me feel bad even today. So I don't want to be defeated by my enemies. In fact, I don't even want to have enemies. So I go all the way back to actually saying that they just did that out of their own trauma, and they did their own best. And that's the best that they could think of. So it's certainly not my fault, and it's not even their fault. It's all shaitan. Okay. And so the more I can roll that back up, and then how does the shaitan get dissolved and disarmed is by going back to God, right? So God is always the first principle, yeah, and brings us that peace, mercifulness, and all that stuff. And if we're going to be more that way, then we have to have mercy even on our enemies, because if we have hate and project negativity onto them, all we're doing is giving our own psychological energy to them, and they will be oppressing us for as long as we don't let go. Okay, so that's a very, very important practice of letting go and forgiving to those people. So in the example that if your dad beat you up while wearing a stripy shirt, even if he's dead now, God bless his soul, you can actually imagine him and say, Dad, I love you, I forgive you, you did your best, and it created me into a man that I am today, which is pretty good. Okay, and once you let go of that, then you can actually love Amir whatever shirt he's wearing.
I love him, by the way. So very well point. I mean, the very, very excellent point.
We didn't answer the question of the difference between male and female emotions.
Hmm.
So I think that's worth talking about at least a little bit, because I think for any one of you guys who is with a person or dealing with a person of opposite sex, you will actually need to understand this a little bit. So, and this is very crudely speaking, okay? So it's not as simple as this, but in a crude sense, it's like this. Men tend to be a lot more rational, okay? So they think first, they think, and then they might feel something. Sometimes they don't feel anything really. And this was earlier on brought up as a thing, like, why do we sometimes, some people are like quite cold and not feel, and some other people are quite triggering. Okay, so men tend to be a lot more rational and thinking first, and this is because biologically, when men were being brought up and so on, usually men would go out and hunt for food and gather resources, which requires a lot of logical and rational thinking to go like, okay, shall we go hunt for goats today, or shall we go and hunt a snake? The way I hunt a snake down is not the way I fish a fish. So there's a lot of tooling and processes and thinking, create a bait, create traps, all this kind of stuff. So you got to think ahead, think all that kind of stuff. So that's kind of male psychology, rational. What do we need to do? Think next day. Will it be okay? Will the weather be good? Will somebody attack us? Do I need to defend? Do I need to build a fire? All these kind of things, rationally thinking. And we'll look to do as little as possible because we're saving our energy, because we never know if we're going to go and have to fight a war because somebody else attack us. Okay. So that's men thinking. And that's why men I don't need the emotional like fear. Why do I need fear when, it's like that's the last thing I need in a battle? I need courage. I need to go willingness, battle, defend, protect my family. Meanwhile, women would be in the village, in the protected area. So they wouldn't necessarily need to feel so much fear because they could count on the men protecting them. Okay. And so what women would do is they would look after babies, and they would go like cradle the baby, give them emotions, look after, feel for the baby, understand, oh, is the baby maybe sick, maybe needs a little bit warm, maybe needs to be fed, and so on, because the baby doesn't speak, right? That doesn't say, hey, I'm hungry, feed me. Hey, I need my nappies changed. It doesn't do. You have to sort of feel what's wrong, okay, or what's right. So women have been brought up a lot more to feel first like in the heart, and then think afterwards what needs to be done. Whereas men think first and feel afterwards. Okay. And so that is why in Islam they say man is the head of the family and the woman is the heart of the family. Okay. You need both, because without both you can't live. Okay. But usually this is kind of like women feel, men think. That's how it's been traditionally. But in postmodern days, that's kind of switching over. And a lot of the time, both men need to both feel and think, and women both need to think and feel. Okay. And so this is kind of the skill to develop. And so when I'm coaching women in the Fresh Mind program, most of the time, they need to learn how to think more logically and rationally, whereas men need to learn how to feel more and really
Yes,
understand what they're feeling.
Jason, Amir, just give me a minute. Jason, I would like to know about your programs and your company. To be honest, I discussed it with Amir. I wanted to have a program with you about your aspiring story. Uh, as you mentioned earlier, from a refugee camp from Bosnia as a refugee to England, and from that refugee camp, heading a company, making a company, and making a very decent life out of for yourself is an inspiring story, and we would like to hear from you someday. But
Sure.
for now, I would request to tell us about more about your programs that you offer to people, and how to reach you. I'm sure there would be people in our audience who would like to join some of your programs.
Yeah. So the program that I offer is called Fresh Mind, and there's a website for it. It's freshmind.life. Okay, so you can read a little bit more about it, but it's all about clearing the psychological traumas that people are hanging on to, and then like really feeling most of the time. You can feel bad even in the best of times, right? Often the time you see people go on a holiday, Mexico, Egypt, Australia, wherever, it's a beautiful 5-star hotel. And what are they doing? They're fighting each other. Why? Because they're bringing their trauma with you, because wherever you go, there you are. You're always with yourself, and you're always carrying those bad emotions unless you choose to let them go. So with Fresh Mind, it's about letting go of all those bad traumatic times. And you can always remember them. Like I always remember the war in Bosnia, but I don't have to feel bad about it. Okay. Because it's finished. It's done. It finished in 95. Okay. And so that's the program that I offer. You can also find out more about me and what I do in the broader sense of things at jasongrant.in, which is my personal website. And so
Sorry, can you come again? Jason Grant dot.
.in, I-N.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, you bought it.
Actually, Jawad, before in offline, we are discussing with Jason. Actually, when after the first session with him, my daughter just came to me. Hey, Papa, I know him very well. I say, how you know? She has seen a lot of YouTube videos, so she is also inspiring. Okay. So we have the quick questions. So people are asking me, you need to take answer. So I am
Yep,
a
sure.
teacher. So maybe it's a short answer, but we will try to take a lot. The first, I love this question. Why
Why? Okay.
before and after marriage?
Okay.
And
All right. So this.
not only the husband and wife, it's also with the mother and sisters and all
Yeah.
family.
Sure.
Emotion has been changed.
Yeah. It's because what you married is a woman in a white dress. Okay. She wasn't wearing a black shirt, but that doesn't mean that she hasn't got a black shirt underneath that white dress. Okay. And so she has always projected to you the best of herself, the white things, the enlightened things, the beautiful, loving, caring, wise things, all the best stuff. And when you marry her, you start slowly understanding and seeing into her own shaitan. And similar is the case with wives discovering that about their husbands. So you're feeling great before you get married, and then more and more you get exposed to the traumas of their lives that they never really were comfortable to open up about, because they themselves don't want to feel that. They don't want to relive those memories. But eventually you realize that if you say to them, hey darling, why are you wearing that red dress? And you just ask that question, she might go, why do you ask me? What's wrong with you? La la la. And there could be some traumatic event where somebody told her not to wear that, right? Because she is a bad person, blah, blah, blah. And then just by you questioning that, she thinks now you're going to go into that kind of traumatic type interaction with her, and she becomes emotional. So it's all actually very, very logical why people act emotional. It's just that most of the time they don't really know why they're doing that. And then for you, it's even more perplexing, where it's like, well, I married a woman in white dress, and now she's acting like a shaitan. What's going on? And you actually get to really know her, and vice versa. And then people are like, whoa, I'm going to have to live with this person for the rest of my life. I made a mistake. And it's like, well, you just weren't aware what people are really like. So then the beautiful quest to get onto is for both people to take off their black shirts and burn them in the background, right? And just keep the white dress on.
Oh,
There's another question from Muhammad Jahanzeb. He
yeah.
says, how to say no to boss playing with his or her emotions to avoid getting into more work-related stress. I would flip the word playing, or I would add managing with or understanding with his her emotions.
Well, I addressed this earlier on by saying you can flip all the no's to yeses, because when people hear yes, they're like, oh, great, yes, I love yes.
But then
Okay.
conditions.
But then conditions. So it's a conditional yes. Sometimes a lot of the time people ask me to do stuff, when I'm doing my design work, everyone's always looking to get something more for less, right? So they'll say stuff like, Jason, can you do this for me for little money? And I say, can you work with me on this project? And I would say yes, and this is how much it costs. And then they say like, oh god, I can't hire you, I don't have that money. And I said, well, that's unfortunate, because I said yes to you, but you're saying no, right? So that's fine, but I won't judge you, right? And sometimes if even someone comes to me and I don't really want to work on a project. So let's say, for example, someone comes and says, we want you to design a new vaccine for people. I said, I don't really like that idea. So I say, yes, I'll work on that. And then I put like a really, really high price, like really ridiculously high. And they said like, oh, like we can't afford that. We really want to work with you, but we can't afford that. It's like, well, that's shame, so that's a conditional yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Last question I have received on the profile: how to control anger when one is a fast burner? Question mark. Or it cannot be controlled? Question mark.
Fast learner.
burner.
for-
For example, he's very angry very fast. For example, as
oh
anything
yeah.
is, people knows what is the button
Short
of.
tempered. Short tempered.
Yeah. So okay. So basically, a lot of us, look, I'm here, Bosnian guy, very passionate. We're just always like loud about everything. And similarly with Pakistanis, Brazilians, Argentinians, Italians, all this like kind of like everything is like, yeah,
Yeah.
all the time.
Very loud.
And
Yes.
so we're just a lot more kind of passionate and energetic people. Okay. And so for us it's even more because we've been conditioned that way. It's our like cultural conditioning and surrounding and so on. So for us it's even more important to calm down and balance and recondition ourselves, right, to be calmer, to not snap, to not get triggered, right? To actually take a step back. So if something triggers you, you might go, and as soon as you take that breath, you kind of like, well, maybe I don't need to react to that at all. Maybe I just need to listen. And and most of the time you realize, yeah, it is like that. So more you then condition yourself or recondition yourself to not react, the better you will actually do that as a natural way of being.
Excellent. So, Jason, we actually, whenever this is our second time, a very brief meeting earlier, and then this time, I guess we need to continue it for unlimited period of time. But somehow we have to keep things closed. We have to make sure that our audience does not just drain away due to the long
Yeah, we
time.
want to make sure that our audience doesn't get angry.
Yes, yes.
Balance.
So we need to keep balance.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. You are inspiring. You are motivating, and to be honest with you, you are thoughtful.
Thank you very
Uh,
much, guys.
you make people think. As I said, I learned last time. I practiced it, and this time I learned a lot more. With the request that you will join us soon,
Meditation.
and with a thank
Inshallah.
you,
Yeah.
inshallah, and with a thank you that you have joined us again. I need to close this show.
Thank you, guys.
So the point in today's session, many important elements have been established. One of the key learning for me was that however I react to certain situation is based on my previous life. Whatever has happened to me would react. As Jason said, it depends what kind of a black shirt I'm wearing. What we need to do, we need to take it off and burn it. With
Yeah.
this key important learning today, I thank you, Jason. I thank everyone who has been watching and who will watch again. Jason runs a company and he offers a very good courses for redefining humanity.
Yeah.
If you wish to take that course, please go log into www.freshminds.co.uk, freshminds.life, and Jason Grants has his personal website that is www.jasongrant.in. Thank you very much, Jason. Hope to see you soon. Uh, ऑल द पीपल हियर इन पाकिस्तान, आप तमाम लोगों के लिए मेरी दिल से दुआ है कि आप लोग सेफ रहिए, शॉपिंग पे जाइए लेकिन एसओपी को फॉलो कीजिए। खुदा हम सबका हामी और नासिर हो। खुदा पामान।
Thank you very much, guys. Bye bye.